So in 2013, in New York City, what we find is the absence of poignant evaluations of the work of people of color and their contributions to farming, community gardening, or stewardship of land in public spaces. As the vice president and visionary for this memorial project, it is incredibly important that we all take the time to look inwards in our communities and to go deeper in our understandings of how we will be remembered after we leave. And particularly for people of color and women, there is this huge disparity of the absence of our voices and meaningful recordings or the preservation of our works in the world, in the communities that we live, that we give, where we love, where we nurture our old, our children. So with that deep understanding welling up inside of me as a farmer and as a woman farmer operating in one of the oldest and largest African American projects in New York City, I woke up and realized that every year when I looked at my membership roster, that I was losing, that we were losing at least 4 or 5 people. Some people to death, some people had moved away, some people were just getting frail and could no longer serve the earth in the way that they might have before. And so with that understanding, I took it upon myself, and with the permission of my elders and my ancestors, I have come to share in a very raw, unrefined, uncensored form, the contributions of some people of color to the village of Bedford-Stuyvesant. And this contribution that is in our presentation, in our memorial exhibit, in our prayers that we raise to the ancestors to remember the contributions of our gardeners that have passed on into ancestor land, to the remembering of the way we've cooked our foods, made our wines, created our pickles, made our breads. Like all of these skills, the skills of our carvers, of our builders, of our land people, like this is a humble attempt to capture in a very organic manner the efforts of our people to the Hattie Carthan Community Garden in Bedford-Stuyvesant. It is our attempt to reclaim our sovereignty. Thank you.
Yes, I know my grandmother very well on both sides of the family. They have to make a little garden in their backyard to supply the food. And the only thing they might go out there to buy is like buying meat and stuff like beef and stuff. But chicken, they rear right in the back of the house.
I was born and raised in Rockingham, North Carolina. I came here in 1965 or 66. Yeah, we worked on the farm, down in North Carolina. The cotton fields, the tobacco fields, and stuff like that. It wasn't our farm, but we worked on somebody else's farm, to survive. Where we lived at, white people owned, they owned the property. My parents, they worked, and they did the best that they could do for us.
I was born here in Brooklyn, New York, but I was raised in the South. My grandfather used to work for this guy, and what we did, we what they call sharecrop. And so he gave us about 3 or 4 acres of land that we could grow our own stuff on, you know. Oh, he had maybe 1,000, maybe 1,500 acres of land. And as I grew up, I start working for him, you know, driving tractor, breaking land with the tractors and stuff like that. You own your own property, you got a chance to do pretty much what you want to do. But when you work at somebody else's land and he giving you a little spot, you know, you don't have too much of a chance to do what like you want to. You know, you could sell it or whatever, or hand it down to your kids or whatever, you know, that's the only reason.
In my family, for as long as we know, my family was involved in the maintenance of farms, in the creation of farms, in the creation of cottage and homesteading industries, in the creation of alternative economies that put farmers at the forefront and the center of the production or the economy. They were revered and honored as people who were food producers, who had mills, who ground the grains for the entire villages, who made the medicines for the entire villages, who counseled people in terms of holistic aspects of themselves and the land, who showed through their lifestyle and their existence what it means to be in relationship to land. That has always been the space that my family has held for thousands of years.
I was born and raised in North Carolina in 1939. Yes, I worked on a farm. I wasn't a farmer myself. I was a tractor driver. When I was a kid, my grandmother's farm. They had close to 50 acres or better that they farmed. Well, they grew corn, cotton, tobacco, tomatoes, big collard greens, potatoes. They just grow a lot of vegetables. Everything I learned about farming, growing and gardening, corn, beans and stuff like that. I learned that down in North Carolina.
My parents are from the South. My mother is from Alabama, and my dad is from Georgia. My maternal grandmother was somewhat of a homemaker. My paternal grandmother, she was a maid, you know, which was like the primary profession of black women in the South. You know, she took care of the children of a white family. She cooked and, you know, cared for the family. My paternal grandfather was like a laborer, a farm laborer. My maternal grandfather, he was somewhat of a gangster. But my dad and his father didn't get along very well. And something that my father told me that I remember was like there was a number of things that hurt him as a youngster, but I think the biggest thing that hurt my father growing up in the South was his father decided that he could no longer go to school and that he needed to help with picking sweet potatoes. He needed to do farm work.
I was born in Mississippi. Yes, we farmed. We corn, sweet potatoes, name it, we raised it. And that's why I said the food now is hurting people, but then we raised it. Collard green, mustard green, turnip, squash, radish, name it, we raised it. And we had a good life. I had a good life.
Grew up in North Carolina, but my family lived in Virginia. We used to go back and forth down there. Every summer, when we come out of school, if we didn't do a little work on the farm or something like that, well, Well, my father used to own one, him and his brother, many years ago when I was coming up as a child. And he went to work with my father's brothers. They just get rid of the farm or something like that. But I don't really know too much about it because I was a child anyway, But I knew I was on there. They had mules, cows, horses, and whatever. They had all them things. But I knew I got kicked by one. See, I remember that. I don't care how small I was. I remember I got hit by one. It up him.
Born in Bishopville, South Carolina. Childhood, it was very good to me. We didn't have it. Some days we had to go out and work in the field because South Carolina is an agricultural state. And then some days my mother would say, "Oh, I need you to stay home today." I go and talk to the teacher, or either when you go back to school tomorrow, I give you a note, you take to the teacher the reason why you was absent, and this and that. Well, there used to be a guy named Darby McCatherine. Well, he owned a farm. He had about 180 mules, this guy. My father and my uncles, my brothers, I'm the oldest out of there, I would say my uncles and their children, the older ones, they used to plow the mules to cultivate the farm. That we had like a half acre of land that we would plant sweet potatoes, collard green, cabbage, cucumbers, tomatoes, okra, and stuff like that.
I didn't know nothing about no farming. I was a kid. Matter of fact, the part of Savannah I come from, they had no farm. I live on that right there in almost the outskirts of the city. They had no farms there.
Yeah, the majority of our family lives down south still. So some of us that's up here, but not many. I just remember a lot of home cooked food, which was really good. Like my mom and them would be out there shelling beans or shucking corn and then making food there. So they cooked a lot, and then they used a lot. Some of what they grew, but they also bought things from the store. But just a lot of home cooked meals, big family dinners.
I cook rice, I cook beans, plantain, and squash.
Well, we grew our own beef. We had our own beef. We killed our own beef, our own hog. We didn't buy too much out of the store. My grandfather grew sugar cane. He made his own syrup. We canned the most of it. When we farmed the gardens, we canned all the food out of the garden up for the winter time. We canned everything. Tomatoes, butter beans, lima beans. We canned all that. We could eat out of the garden year round.
They call it breadfruit and plantain, saltfish.
This community right here, this used to be Polish and other white Jews going towards Myrtle Avenue. And for a while, in the 50s and the 60s, when blacks started coming here and they started moving further out into Williamsburg, I was here at that time because my grandmother, as I told you, owned the house on this block. So I grew up with knowing that there were white people that lived over here.
When I first came to New York, I used to play in that park there as a kid. My grandmother was living right down 315 Nostrand Avenue. Around this neighborhood here, that block there, on that block there was a tree in front of every house. That building right there, that was a nursing home. You understand? And the only people living in that block was white people. No black people live on that block, period. They live around the corner of Green Avenue, but they live around there. They live on Nostrand Avenue, but they didn't live there. You understand? And when the first
black person move over there in that neighborhood there, right on that block there, all of them moved out. And you asking me, I'm telling you. You understand? But now, they want it all back. They want it all back now.
When I come to New York in the park over there, grass was just as high as the trees. Certain things that you would see, activities that's going on. And that park over there, like every weekend, you would find somebody hanging from a tree. That's the history of that park right there. During the time they was gangbanging, you know.
Well, I know for my grandfather and my grandmother who live here, they were both from South and they worked hard, and my grandpa had saved a little money, and that's when the people were moving out. And so he was able to get a good deal, I think $12,000 he paid for it. Worked hard. He said he used to take his lunch and eat beans.
When I was like in the 60s, we used to play basketball in the school park over there. And there used to be a big church over here. And we was out there in the park playing basketball when the church burned down. They were supposed to be rebuilding it. I don't know what happened with that. So somebody turned it into a community garden.
It was just a growed up lot that certain people had access to, like 2 or 3 people would come in and garden, they had access to it. Well, it was like an eyesore, so most of the block were homeowners, so it's just like a big eyesore when people come around. You got a little green and then the rest all is trash and grow up bricks, and people would dump stuff even in the farmer's market, boats, dogs, everything was there. So it's more like, let's try to beautify our area, clean it up, that sort of thing, until we got into, then the garden just became like the meeting place of the community. Because we always let community in. Our kids would camp out here. We didn't have camping experiences, so the parents would come, we would cook pigs or things like that, and it takes all night. And so the kids would get sleeping bags and slept all on the ground, so that was like their camping experience. So a lot of firsts happened for us here that we would not have probably even did before. I think they didn't think anybody cared. So if they put the building on there, it wouldn't have mattered because nobody would say anything. But I guess it kind of shook them up because we got probably like 10,000 signatures in the community to say, no, we want to leave this as a garden. We want to have a green space. Because they argued us, well, you got the park across the street. We said, yeah, it's different, you know. It's not like, now it has a dog run and all that, but it was did not have a good reputation. You know, a lot of people got killed there, people were hung in the park and different things. So like this was just like our little closed-in secret garden where people could be safe. So it became like a haven. So it's like, that's a park, this is the haven.
They said they were trying to clear the land because all over here was nothing but houses. You understand? And under this ground here is nothing but cellars, you know. And they were trying to fill all this stuff in and whatnot. And they did. And they had a few members out here that started it off. And I give them credit for that. They started it off, and after that, more people start coming in, And we had one woman out here, her name was Miss Robinson, and she planted most of these trees around here. I'm talking about the trees on the outskirts out there.
When I was 7 years old, I remember coming here. They used to host a lot of barbecues. I was one of the kids that run around the hoop house and stuff like that. Back here, where they do the Saturday market, where they sell vegetables and fruits at, there used to be a abandoned lock where a lot of people it was dead dogs back here. People used to sell drugs, stuff like that. So when I come back when I was around 13, I was surprised they was having a fruit stand and stuff like that, selling fruits and stuff. I was very surprised because all along when I was little, all the kids and grown ups stay here, but back here, it was just terrible. A lot of cars. Even Miss Fleming said she got the dog teeth that was dead in the back at home.
Yes, this year I got a plot. Right now it's eggplant, it's onions, squash, then there I harvested radishes from there. So I think this is usually I'm helping like with the market plots, like weeding or watering, but this has been my first experience with like deciding what to plant and all of those things. So it's been like definitely a chance to see like it's not as easy as it looks, I guess, when I see the gardeners' plots that have so much food in them.
Well, we have cucumbers, tomatoes, okra, cabbage, corn, zucchini, eggplants, squash. Practically everything in the supermarket we grow. We grow here. Even much we have the grapevine over there. I guess you've seen that. The fig tree over there, the apple trees and stuff. Peach trees, sunflowers.
I enjoy it. It keeps me going. So I retired too. See, when I was working, I ain't had time to be doing this right here, what I'm doing now. And after I retired, I thought I could get me a hobby to do, something like that. It keeps me going. Between this and the doctor. Yeah, it keeps me stepping.
I was like, it's beautiful, you know. And I paid my dues, and I was told where my plot would be, and I was like, okay, now I can work this soil and figure this out, you know. And being able to see something that I, you know, recognize from childhood, the magnolia tree, and seeing people growing watermelons. I'm like, wow, and collard greens. I'm like, you grow that stuff in Brooklyn? You know, like, yeah, you grow it in Brooklyn, you know. I'm like, oh, wow, okay.
It just reminded me a lot of my child. Well, most of the gardeners in here, I think they basically come from the South anyway. So I'm figuring that's how they see it. I mean, that's how I see it. I'm not sure how they see it.
I'd never seen the parties. I'd never known anything about the history of the garden. I knew nothing about the culture of the people that created the space. I came in with fervence and dedication to the earth is why I came here. I was seeking meaningful connections to the plant realms.
Yeah, I have a garden over there. Tomato, squash, butternut squash, beans, okra. I still grow the same thing. Fresh corn. See all that corn over there? It belongs to me.
Well, people was in the garden planting, and I would pass by because I like to see things grow. And I asked one person to give me 2 tomatoes because I like the green fried tomatoes. And he told me, I'm not going to call his name, he told me you could come and get you a plot and plant your own. So I didn't know that. And so I came out here, and that's when I got the plot I have right today. And I started to plant my own because I love green fried tomatoes. And I haven't had any this year, but I didn't plant nothing because it was too hot this year.
Most products. It's a whole lot of things here. I would tell you in general, let me just put it this way. In general, when I sit back and look where we are now and where we were when I came here, I feel very good about it. I feel very good about it, and because it's a determination that you don't let your people down. You don't let the people that work so hard before you get here. So when you decide to retire or resign, you can look back and say, I thank you all. Because you got to thank them too, because they work with you. Without their help or whatever it is, it won't be achieved.
The work that we do with informing the youths is liberation work. So it's liberating them to make the most of their lives in relation to the garden and in the world. How they decide to use that in the world is like a seed scattered in the wind. Will it blow back? Perhaps they will be in philanthropy one day. Perhaps they will have to decide on zoning for the garden one day. Perhaps they will be our council person one day and will remember Miss Fleming instilled this strong sense of leadership, resilience, sovereignty inside of us that caused that to happen. Maybe they will remember Mr. Calajo's kindness one day. Maybe they will remember Mama Tina feeding them some smothered chicken. Maybe they will remember Mr. Simmons' succotash, that although he is spicy in his personality, his succotash is the most nurturing meal you can ever taste. Maybe they will remember, like I remember, the day Mr. Simmons showed me to plant sweet potatoes.
We started it. We did it. So why should somebody else try to come in here and take it? And that's what happened. But I could get along with them. You understand? They just don't try to take it over.
What makes the project unique, that it's a people of color-led project. It's hard to maintain that or keep that going because the community is changing. A lot of the people that come or that are interested in gardening aren't people of color. I think it's a challenge to be able to remain a people of color-led project and to get other people of color interested, but I think it's something that makes it unique. And I think because it was, again, started by people of color, the market also was started by people of color, the neighborhood is predominantly, or was predominantly, people of color. So you want, the garden to still represent that. And also because people of color were not involved, or it's not talked about as much, involved in agriculture. And they have agriculture skills, so, keeping them involved in agriculture and being able to have a place to, grow their food or use those skills that they have.
At least we accomplishing something here in Bedford-Stuyvesant that the whole world can see. Everybody come by here, they're amazed how we have this garden put together, and we keep it together. So they stop all the time and look and see how beautiful the gardens and stuff is. So that's right there is a reason to keep it going.
Yeah, I even tell these people out here now. I say one day y'all gonna walk by here and y'all gonna look back over here in this spot here and say, I wonder where all them buildings come from. Because they'll lose it. When they said that we had a permanent status for this place, we had Mayor Giuliani said nothing is permanent. Do you understand what I'm talking about? I hope before I leave from this side of the dirt garden that this place will still be here before I pass away.
That we continue to be here and we continue to work together. That's the legacy, that we work together and keep the space for generations to come. That every family will have an opportunity to be part of this safe haven, and it's just peaceful here. It's very peaceful.